Alright, this is a video to you, Gary, and I'm just gonna assume you'll see it. Um, I saw your video on logic. I guess there's a second part. I mean, one thing I want to say, so this video is at Vimeo, and I mean, there's nothing in that video that's going to get flagged. And even if you, it wasn't rude at all, but even if you had a more typically rude video with rudeness in it, I mean, you know, I'll write a letter saying I don't consider it hate speech if I'm the target or whatever. You know, it's just, could you put it at YouTube for now? So I could use my video note thing, because I just watched your video and had to take some paper notes, and it sucks. My tool is very useful. Now, one solution is to go ahead and make it work with Vimeo. But you guys are already pissed at Vimeo. I don't want to. You saw the group thing. Obviously, I need some. I was amazing how much I got done, but in the end, it was also rushed because, amazing how much you get done often means amazing how little you tested it. Okay. So I think it did pretty well, but I don't know when you went there, and I'm sorry you had some problem. I did see a video where you mentioned some problems you were having with Firefox, and I doubt they were caused by my page, but they definitely probably weren't helped. And it depends when you went, because there was a bug that would cause it would cause something to pop up if you saw it. It should, but depending on your browser and your settings, maybe it wouldn't. The error should pop up even regardless of your pop-up settings, but maybe not, right? But the system would have got confused, and that page would have just needed to be closed because it tries to make a connection and get something for something that doesn't exist. I didn't say, yeah. When Jay Sounder deleted his channel, I'd already scanned him into the Ephelis group, and it thought he was there, so that was a problem. And then you're also right, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I checked a bunch the night I made the feature and thought I got it sorting, but yeah, there's some problems in there that I caused with the time stuff, and that I've got various kinds of timestamps, and the way I've named them could be confusing. Some things have a member called timestamp. That's when that record was created. Other ones, unfortunately, have timestamp as when the video that record refers to was uploaded. So maybe I have some confusion like that, and also the JavaScript to sort those divs. I'm just a brand new JavaScript programmer, and like I normally do, I'm finding out what it really can do. So that means breaking it in various ways sometimes. But my point on this is that obviously I got some work there. I got to sort the thing. I have to finish some of the features I thought were working. I have to protect it against things that happen that can't just assume don't happen, like someone deleting their account. And I'm afraid if I use the time instead, or even let's say I finish that, and before going on to the next thing, I support Vimeo. It can seek. I could use my system could use that with a couple days. Let's 50 hours work. I could get it working with Vimeo probably, maybe less. And but you guys could be kicked off there by then. Maybe I should just use the flow player. Oh, but it doesn't seek unless you're on the right kind of back end, the right kind of web server. And I don't want to support ones that don't seek. See, I want to get it so I can use this tool for everything. And I'm interested in talking to you on anything besides antinatalism, even ephilism. I mean, I would be interested in talking about what are the distinctions. What people might be called antinatalists that you say, well, that's not my kind of antinatalism that I call ephilism. That's not my preference, but things like logic and other things. But also there's all this group stuff. I'm blocked from all of your channels, and you have all these groups at Vimeo. You have to be a member of the group. That exclusive stuff means I have to jump over hoops, and I'm just too busy and not in the mood. One way I keep up when I don't have time for a video is, I still, while I'm working, I listen to things. I want to be able to leave a comment. Again, I understand you, but you leave 40 comments. Piero, okay. I'll leave no more than 3 comments on a video. I mean, whatever. I'm willing to, acknowledge your sensibilities. I don't know. You don't do much in comments, but I guess you do read them, so maybe you don't want to have to read all mine. They're very long. They're like essays. Okay. well, but you're gonna make hoops using exclusivity features of websites. Then it makes it hard to reply. Okay, now what you said about logic, and you used like plus is a perfect example actually. Plus is in nature. Look, things are additive, and you don't see how arbitrary that is. You don't see all of the arbitrary messes you can make of one tree plus one tree equals two tree. That is objective. But wait, those two trees are 10 cords of wood, and those two trees are 8 cords of wood. Well, then the number is 8, and that is absolute. Wait, is it 2 or is it 8 or is it 10 or is it... It is whichever, but when you choose a number, it is absolute. I mean, there's just so many. And what about minus? One tree minus one tree. You can't, you burn the tree up, all the chemicals are still there. You can't minus things. So, but is minus in nature too? Yes, because I can have 2 trees and I take one and I move it there. So minus means moving outside of a circle. Yes. Numbers are like that. It's like I put a circle. I'm going to count it as a tree. I'm going to count it in chords. There's a million answers. But the main thing is, you are a logical person. It's to a good degree. I appreciate your logic. It's one reason I'm asking you to put 35 and hour-long videos at YouTube so that I can watch them once and use my note thing to refresh to the parts that I might want to look at for a reply or just to see later, because there's some logic in there. It's interesting to hear that thought process, even when part of the interesting part is, oh, that's where you go off the rails. I see that a lot. Oh, that's interesting logic, and then, oh, that's where you went off the rails. But the basic thing comes down to what you're talking about with logic and in principle. You could push it out to arbitrary number, precision till you get to the end. And what if there is no end, like pi, where it goes on forever, and you always have to take a finite number? And the problem is that I push the digits out to an area and I say, look, weird stuff starts to happen here, and you're like, no, I don't have to worry about it. But you have to be wrong for my stuff to be true. But I don't have to, it's detail we don't need. Yeah, the concept minus isn't in nature, it's in our heads. It's a way we have of thinking about nature. And logic, this is just a really huge thing. Logic just is science and all this. And somebody else said that recently. You don't know logic. Logic is A into B. You got to get A. That's not logic. How you get A is not logic. You could get it with empiricism and whatnot. But when you say logic is out there in the world, the pluses and the minuses and everything are combined, well, look, you have to either go back to just evidence, like things you saw, limited things you saw, or what, classical Western logicians have often hoped for, is you go back to these axioms that are absolutely true, right? Because the fact that there's a missing piece of the leaf is not the same as the fact that a deer ate it. Maybe a rabbit ate it. Maybe a human with tweezers artistically cut something that looks like a deer. So you have to go find back and see, okay, no, now I see a deer eating, and where did the deer come from? It's all going to be evidential with more facts to find, unless, as these classical Western logicians have hoped, that you trace it back to, law of identity and things that then lead to everything else. But Gary, if you do that, then that means the universe around you is the conclusion of a logical argument. And you obviously don't think that. I want to make a comment on when you went about insane and sane gods and the illogic of a stupid god. Okay, first of all, right after Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, and that's all I know, he uses the can't be an insane god, deceiver god. Doesn't make sense to get back to everything else he believed, because he wasn't a skeptic. So that's funny that you would use the same thing. And but I get where you're coming from, but come on. A smart god is also logically incoherent. So that a stupid god is logically incoherent could just be the god part. Anything god becomes an incoherent concept, then maybe it's not the anything part, but the God part is the incoherent part. Just an idea. It should be obvious that, you know, that this is a pen because I can use it as a pen. And if I find a stick that's burnt with charcoal and I say that's a pencil, and I can use it as a pencil, it's a pencil while it's not a very good pencil and all kinds of other qualifications, but it is that thing by virtue of its relationships. And you won't believe me, and you haven't studied logic enough to know that in classical logic that's the problem. For that to be true, the concept of pen has to exist in the real world, separate from any people. Pen's lying on the table and there's no living, we've all died from ethylism, and it's still a pen. No, it's just a pile of chemicals at that point when it's impossible for it to ever be used or conceived of as a pen applied. Because pen means that it has certain properties, sure, but it also means those properties have a meaning, which is that it can be used in some relationship with paper and me and whatnot to write ideas for my neurology or whatever. Okay? And that is, it's just, I'm sorry, classical categorization, as you think of it, like logic employs, relies heavily on the fact that it can't depend on anything else. Look up how our conditional, the if-then of logic, it's crazy. It's not at all like a normal if-then. And the reason is because it has to accommodate this disconnection, that this can be a pen based on just looking at it, not on the relationships with the world. As soon as you have to deal with the relationships with the world, it becomes tremendously complex, and you lose the simplification that logical and mathematical systems offer. And one thing I also don't understand is, we traditionally say logic, whatever else we think it's good for, or we can characterize it as, it's rules of inference. You can take one fact or set of facts and you can infer another set of facts from that using logic, right? Or that's the idea. The logic might be wrong and it's invalid and it doesn't go from true to true, but that's the idea. The logic is what transforms that, and they're the valid rules, so it's supposed to be the ones that transform something true into something true, but also something false into something false, right? So for a logical argument like you're talking about, where it fits nature, you need logic for the transformation, but you also need something to get those starting facts, and that's called experimentation, and that's not logical. It fits into logic in the sense that once you have them, you can use logic, but logic does not generate those. Those are generated by experiments, experiences, basically relative to our body and how we interact with the universe. Okay? And there's many forms of logic. There's many people that have said, well, here's I think are the rules of inference, and here's and there's problems with all those rules, which is why people keep making new ones and trying new things to capture new elements of reality that seemed ignored or actually misrepresented with logic. And there's a lot of work on this to show how people really think and why it's still sensible and reasonable and rational. Right? The big picture. There's sensibility and rationality and reasonableness to it. But calling it all logic is pointless, because that's like calling all science math, and a lot of people do that too. But it's very accessible. Please go study what math is and what, you know, the top mathematicians are studying, and just go talk to one and say, well, what's different between what you do in physics? Because I thought, you know, math is physics, but it's not. There's some distinctions here that are useful. Okay. And the main reason it's important is because when you go logic, it's all these how I get to the absolute truth. And you're forgetting that logic needs inputs. There's a big question of how do you get those? And then you say, well, through the evidence, and you look, and you can't get it to all the degrees, but you got to push it out to be enough degrees for what you got, which is what I say, the engineering approach. But you want to call that logic too? No. No. That's your sense.